Hey my sugar bears, welcome back to my channel, Bougie AF. It's your host, JackeeNicole. It's where I say stay bougie on them. It's me feeding you feminism for the soul. It's my soul food offering. It's where I apply pressure to issues by being critical and logical. Now don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Now let's get to the commentary where I can guarantee you I will be doing too much because that's just me. And like Sheree said, who's gonna check me, boo?
JackeeNicole, Bougie AF. So listen, this one's a little difficult for me. I don't want to be my extra self, but I mean sometimes I can't even help it. Please don't forget to go check out my YouTube at Bougie AF, right? So listen, this one, I mean, we all hearing everything that's coming out between Teyana and Chris Brown and what allegedly happened with Usher. And I'm going to do actually a few videos on it, but this video is not about, well, it's not per se about what happened between Chris Brown and Usher. And the reason why I'm taking a different approach in talking about this tonight is because I recently seen another interview and it had my mind thinking on top of everything that Eboni K Williams talked about, conditioning and stuff like that. And so when I, started thinking about like how I wanted to talk about the Chris Brown and Usher and Teyana situation, I started thinking about this interview that Teyana had just recently did with Angie Martinez. And in that interview, she talks about, the things that she has been through with the industry, with different men, and how she's really gotten, the short end of the stick in a lot of her situations. And I remember listening to the interview and thinking she's, amazing. I'm such a fan of her, right? And I remember listening in the interview and her describing the different situations, different times that she thought, things should have happened for her, and different times that, she felt like she was overlooked, or times that she felt like she was ignored. And the way she, there was no anger. She most definitely didn't try to tear these black men down at all, right? Even though on the business tip, she was a young girl at 15 years old, probably was handling more of her business than probably she should have, and probably didn't. Well, of course, at 15 she didn't have the tools to like kind of advocate and kind of direct her career, or try, or even to be even have the ability to kind of demand what she needed. So I can most definitely see in all of that not being something that she was unable to do, right? It's not like she comes from a musical family or anything like that. So I started thinking about that interview, and I started to remember how I was so annoyed at the end of by the end of that interview. And not per se like annoyed, like mad at Teyana or anything like that, but I was frustrated because what I felt like I heard was the conditioning, right? That conditioning that Eboni K Williams talked about in terms of like that happens sometimes within the black community, right? Where you get treated a certain way and you continue to make excuses for the people who've treated you a certain way, right? And you don't call a thing, right? You downplay it, you minimize it, you most definitely do a lot of humanizing the person who may have did something to you. And I felt like in that interview, so she did it a lot in the interview where she always minimized and always made sure she humanized the men that she was previously signed with, from Pharrell to Kanye West, right? Always talking about, they always had so much going on, or, making it seem as though, I don't feel like they purposely did this. And I felt like, that is something that you do in the terms of like when people make excuse for their abusers, right? And we're not talking about any type of physical abuse or anything like that, but we are most definitely talking about business abuse, like, right, being in bad relationships in a business and, and people taking advantage of you, or, not doing what they're supposed to do or do right by you, right? Essentially, she sat in an interview and she talked about, being very much so overlooked, ignored, things that I felt like at the point where she was like, when she was 15 years old, she wasn't talking about anything new, right? Her experience or what was happening to her was not something that we all weren't aware of that was happening to her, right? Like, where's Teyana, right? Where, she is putting herself second, right? Behind these men who are experiencing like the heights of their career, right? And she's being totally ignored. Her music is being shelved. Kanye's doing very inconsiderate things in terms of like not communicating with her about her album, releasing her album without her really kind of knowing, having a lot of input, or even Pharrell just totally not putting anything out, right? So, she talked about different times that she thought, hey, Fade came out. I got all this, hype. Let's have something, I need to be able to put something out. And her not even knowing about Faded coming out. I think that's what it is. And I'm just listening to her like, okay, that's inconsiderate. But to me, Kanye's quite aware of like how you capitalize off of momentum, how you capitalize off of, people talking about you. He's quite aware because he does it for himself, right? But for him not to have that consideration of Teyana is telling, right? But just to hear her continue to humanize him, right? And so again, I started thinking about the interview, and like I said, when I watched the interview, I was totally annoyed by it at the end of it, because it just broke my heart, because again, I heard a woman that is so conditioned into trying to make up excuses for especially black men, because she doesn't want to look like she's trying to tear them down, even though they didn't do right by her. There was a lot of ungratefulness in terms of like, oh, but things worked out for me in other ways, where you kind of excuse their behavior because you were able to make things happen another way. So kind of again minimizing it, right? So I remember just sitting there, just listening to her. It was hard. So I'm going to end this in these last 3 minutes by saying that, through that whole experience with her record deal with, Pharrell and Kanye, she held them down. Like, she never badmouthed them while this was happening to her. And I'm talking about since, like, she has been famous since 2012, right? So this is the first time she's ever kind of advocated and spoken up about, like, what she experienced and what people has done to her. And so I'm bringing it forward to what just recently happened with Chris Brown allegedly putting his hands on Usher after getting into an argument with Teyana and feeling some sort of way about her not being able to do something for him, right? In terms, I guess she was supposed to perform with him for the AMAs for Michael Jackson. And I felt like, this person has, talking about Teyana, and I have to critique you in a way too, Teyana, because you felt that there was some type of benefit with being associated with a very toxic person in terms of Chris Brown. You rode with him when he through all of the Carucci, through all the Rihanna, through all the allegations of abuse, through all the colorism, and you always found the way to say, that's my bro. You always like held it down. And I think again, that's another more of that conditioning, right? Because you've been doing it. You did it for Pharrell, you did it for Kanye, and of course you're doing it for your boy best friend, which is Chris Brown, right? And just to see that it was just so easy for that one time through your whole probably relationship with him that you couldn't come through, right? And just to see that he turned around and treated you the way he treats women. And I think it has to be a humbling experience where you may have thought you were different, right? I'm not quite sure why this man felt like he could talk to you like that. I'm not quite sure why you take it upon yourself or feel like you have to hold these men down in this type of way when you're talking about business, right? You don't. You don't owe them that at all. Because the way they treated you, they didn't feel like they owed you anything, right? They knew they weren't working on your career. They knew they put you on the back burner. They knew they weren't doing right by you in business terms, because let me tell you something, baby. People know what they won't allow for themselves, right? So they knew they weren't doing right by you as an artist that entire time, and they did not give a fuck, right? And I think you need somebody to tell you they didn't give a fuck. With that being said, you do have to take some responsibility. You've decided to be associated with these type of people. Iman Shumpert is the only man you have to make an excuse for. Iman Shumpert is the only man that you have to try to understand, right? So I'm sorry that somebody has taught you that you should be out here caping for niggas that do not deserve it. Right? That's all I got. Bye.
All right, now, y'all know how we do. We keep it posh as F. We keep it black as F. We keep it bougie as F. We keep being blessed as F, y'all. And y'all be black, y'all. Kiss, 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 kiss. And don't you forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Bye.